So in the video, I'm going to cover some of the mistakes I made and some of the things I could improve on as far as tanking in BWD. I will be skipping over Atramedes because I don't tank on that fight. I am just a DPS on that fight specifically. So skipping over that and trying to cut some of the other ones shorter because it is a longer fight, because a lot of it's a rinse and repeat type of thing for majority of the bosses. I'll go over explaining where I'm using my cooldowns, where I try to use a lot of the extra stuff that I have just to mitigate a lot of the damage. All right, so we're going to start off with Magmaw. I usually start with first tank. We should probably swap it so that the other tank can tank first. The reason why we're doing me first is I can utilize a little bit more cooldowns and he has an easier time to grip the ads in for the bone constructs. Essentially, first thing you want to do when you first start is just make sure that you have all of your stuff ready to go. About 5 seconds per pull, I'm popping my pre-pot as well as bark skin. I missed my pre-pot there for bad reasons. So I'm also popping my enrage with my synapse springs at the same time for a little bit more dodge, a little bit more avoidance at this time. Rotating through my cooldowns with bark skin and trinket after my synapse springs are down. So now I just have trinket rolling. I'm going to be basically just eating the little bit of damage that's coming out next um, until he hits about 80%. When it hits about 80%, I'm calling for one hand of sack from one of our holy paladins. And then shortly after that, I'm asking for another one. So at about 80%, I've got my first hand of sack going. Next one, I'm going to be using the other Holy Paladin's hand of sack and then into a pain sup. Shortly before Mangle comes up, you can see the timer there just right above my character. I'm going to be popping Frenzied Regen for the extra 30% HP, like really shortly before the Mangle actually comes off. Um, just for the extra bit of damage. Rotating through bark skin again because I have bark skin up. And should be popping Frenzied Regen and Survival Instincts. There's my Frenzied Regen right before Mangle. And then when I'm up, I'm popping my Survival Instincts, so I'm taking 50% less damage while I'm up there. When I am up there, I am focusing the head. I'm not focusing the body because I can do the extra damage to the head. And it allows me to push out a little bit more DPS. It also allows me to get all the debuffs up that are needed for melee, at least, to essentially get a little bit extra damage right off the start. After I come back down, I'm straight taunting the ad and just pulling it right next to the group. It doesn't really matter which way it's facing. Um, a lot of the melee like it so that it's turned behind, but I don't see a big reason of why to turn it around because it's only a level 85 mob. So it doesn't make any sense to me to turn it around. It doesn't actually cleave. You can see that he taunted in the other ad, but I just taunted it off of him. We've got an Armageddon going out, so all the melee should be focusing it. But again, I don't think the turning around is really necessary. It puts you in danger of like the fire and stuff, so I don't really like the positioning where we are, but there's not much I can really do to reposition the mob as much as possible. Um, so essentially, just keeping it next to cleave is your main prio, and then when the next one comes up, your growl and fairy fire at the same time, just so you can get some extra threat from the kiters. That's what I do. You may opt into somebody else like misdirecting it to you. That's okay too. Just make sure you're avoiding the drop down when he does come down, and make sure you get your people up so that they can instantly toss the hooks out and get the head down as soon as possible. And then now, with the next ad coming up, you can see it's in the way back, so I'm having to move out. It's very, very dangerous to do it that way. only reason you can pull it off is if you're looking at the timers for Pillar of Flame. When Pillar of Flame's about to come out, you're going to have to taunt it when it gets a little bit closer. There's not much else you can really do. Now that we're on the second head, we did pop Bloodlust, and you can see I have like all my cooldowns ready. It's fine that you do have your cooldowns ready and everything. You don't necessarily have to have them up. It just makes it a lot easier so that you can rotate through cooldowns. So you can see a pop in Rage with Synapse Springs again, with Barkskin just to get some extra threats off the start, because threat resets every time he comes back up. Now I'm rolling my potion with my trinkets. I'm just kind of basically going through the motions, rolling through all my cooldowns as much as possible to save a little bit of extra damage before the boss goes down. Alright, next we've got Omnotron. We're tanking this with a Blood DK and a Feral Druid, so I'm telling him that I may be taunting the first mob off of him when it's Arcanatron next. This one just happens to get lucky and we get Magmatron next, and so I just DPS the entire time. The first part of the phase, I'm just DPSing until he hits about 55 energy. Then as soon as he hits 55 energy, I'm going in and preparing to tank the next mob. Poison Protocol, all you have to do is just help with a little bit of cleave. If you're tanking this one, you want to make sure all the ads come out at the same location. So now that the next mob is out, I swapped over. I'm using my Stampeding Roar to get everybody out because we got pulled in. As a Feral Druid, you should be always planning to be the first one. If you don't have another Feral Druid, the reason why is just it makes it a lot easier. You can kind of see me dragging him to the corner, the very, very corner of the pool, just so that I can also get him a little bit more damage into the boss. So the next one is coming up here. I'm stopping my attack. I'm dropping off of it. We don't have a second Savage Roar, so I am just booting away from that pool as fast as possible because I don't want to die. If you get hit in that pool, you're taking 50% extra damage. It's not very worthwhile to sit in those pools. Because you also take damage from them. So I want to get away from that pool as much as possible and get far away from it. Last ad is coming up, and that's Electron. Electron's really easy. You just kind of tank him where he is. If the pool's dropped, you want to drag him to the pool. But you also need to be careful of Nef using a special on the pool, which he does here. You can see that there's some range going over to it, but then they run away from it because they see the pool is going. There's a mage sitting in it, but the mage is perfectly fine to sit in it because they can blink out right before the Annihilation goes out for it. So it's actually perfect timing for him. And so we got a target swap here. Again, you just want to stop attacking and pop some cooldowns, pop some defensives, just so that you can continue tanking it without taking a lot of damage from the mob. If you are poisoned or targeted from the poison protocol, you just want to make sure you're far enough away. Give your ranged enough time to kill it, give your melee enough time to kill it. And then next is Magmatron. We're getting gripped in, and again, I didn't have it because it was on cooldown again, which is fine. I was far enough away from it that it wasn't going to be a danger to me or the rest of the group because the boss is far enough away. So I just run out as fast as possible. I ideally should have charged back in. Now that I'm thinking about it, charging back to the mob or the boss is actually really good on this fight when you get pulled in. Pull out of the cloud as soon as possible. And right about here, I should be stopping an attack. Yep. I'm targeting something else and then just fairy firing the other target just so I can get some damage out. Not much else you can really do in this situation. So the hunter got encased by the flamethrower, and you just want to make sure you're avoiding the flamethrower as well. But our hunter did really well, and he just feigned deathed it, and it went away. Now we're on the last one again. I still have a couple of cooldowns I could use, like my trinket, and I've got my enraged and my synapse springs coming up here soon, but I don't really need to use them. We're just kind of focusing on burning. We did lose quite a few people, so I just need to make sure I'm rotating through everything I can possibly do, calling for extra cooldowns if I need. I don't think we used the paints up this entire fight, which we really should have. But it is okay. The boss is dead, and we will move on. All right. So next we go into Chimeron. I am opening up the cage to let it out, and making sure that our Blood Decay is taking the first break stacks. We're two taking this, so he's taking the first break stacks. I'm doing the second set. Um, so you just need to be very careful when the double attack comes out, and you're utilizing cooldowns and only utilizing your cooldowns if you have break stacks. You can use your trinkets, you can use potions, you can use bark skin on cooldown, but you want to use frenzied regen and your survival instincts for the feud phase, which I'm going to be taking the first feud phase, so I'll kind of show you what I do essentially throughout that. You don't really need to be stacked up with your other tank. It does help with the extra healing or splash healing you could possibly get if from like the druid or even a shaman if they're chain healing the tanks. But ideally, you want to be standing on top of each other because shouldn't get the slimes. So now that we're just basically doing the rotations of taunting back and forth between the double attacks, and he's taking all the break stacks, trying to get the raid. Just make sure your healer's keeping you up as well as the tank. We should be getting a system failure here, possibly with the next massacre. And I'll kind of explain what I do for the massacres and the system failures, I should say. So here comes massacre, and here comes the system failure. So I'm taunting, and I'm holding it the entire time. For my first break stack, which is now, I pop my bark skin for the first double attack, as well as a potion and my synapse springs, just so I can make sure I can try and dodge as much as possible. For the second break stack, when this comes out, I should be popping my survival instincts, and it should last long enough to take the double attack just fine, or even a single attack just fine. So we are now back out of systems failure, so feud's over. We're waiting for his stacks to fall off. I have no reason to be completely worried that the healers can't keep me up because I pop my frenzied regen as well as my trinket at this time. Getting the extra healing and the extra dodge does help. So after he can take the double attacks now, I'm taunting back so that he doesn't get break stacks. For the next feud, he will be taking the break stacks, and I will just be doing absolutely nothing at that point. So he's taunting during the double attacks. I'm taking the break stacks. You still want to try and rotate some of your cooldowns. I could get a little bit more usage out of my synapse springs and bark skins if I'm using them on cooldown like I should be, just to save some healer mana and make it a little bit easier. So here's the second systems failure. He is now tanking the entire time. I am making sure that just in case he does die, I stay in bear form. Ideally, what you could be doing as a off tank or a bear tank for this is you could be going into DPS, popping all your cooldowns, and just going ham on the boss, pushing the boss a little bit faster. But you want the raid HP to be high, so we didn't really get that high before the next massacre, and the change is happening right about now. He's going to be taking everything because it's untauntable at this point. He might be dying here after the next attack, and then you just want to pop everything that you possibly have when you're tanking it. Everything, just pop it all. Um, does not matter. You want to try and avoid as much as possible damage. Don't get in the spirit link because that can happen, and then you're going to die. Um, you don't really need the spirit link as a feral tank. It's more for the other tank if he is tanking first, but it still dies in the end. We do lose a couple more DPS, but it's fine. It's more of like burn the boss before it kills the entire raid type of thing. Everybody's DPSing at this point. Alright, on to Malroiak. I do skip Atramedes for this because I don't tank on it. If you want to watch Atramedes, I will be posting it again in the description. Malroiak is a straightforward fight for an off tank. We end up 3-tanking it just to make the ads a little bit more comfy for the healers and the tanks, so that it doesn't seem like we are going to die on it. There is a 2-tank method that requires a little bit of coordination with your mages. So if you want to try that, I can highly suggest trying it, but the 3-tanking is working for us because he can grab the first set of ads that come out, and then when the next set of ads come out, which would be the swills at this point, I am making sure that I can group them all up and using my AoE taunt to group them all up. I do get hit by the flame a little bit, but it is okay. The debuff falls off. You want to try and let the mages just not go ham on them. Stay on the boss until you actually have them grouped up and you can tell them to go. Ideally, you want to have them just keep going on the boss. I should just tell the mages to focus boss, let me group them up, and I'll call for it when you guys can go ham. Keeping them next to the boss allows for more cleave, but you want to try and stay out of that purple flame as much as possible. Stay out of the dark sludges and just kind of keep them as close to the boss as you possibly can. There isn't a spot on here as well, but I don't really go over there. I kind of run away from it because it's kind of blocked off, so I don't want to take the extra damage. I'd rather just make sure that these things die. Once the vile swills are dead, I then swap back to cat form and just continue DPSing. Mostly, for this one, I'm just waiting for the next set of ads because the next phase is coming soon. Ideally, you want to be DPSing on this part because you still have plenty of time before the next set of ads come out, and like your vengeance is gone anyway, so just go DPS for a little bit. Rings of Frost and Frost Novas are really good for kiting the ads. That's why it requires a little bit of coordination for your mages, just making sure that they can drop those for you when you need them. Entrapment's really good for hunters to help kite as well. He's picking up the opposite side. I only have one mob on me, so I'm going to avoid the trap and just kind of face tank it. Like, it really, when you only have one, they don't really hit very hard. He's going to be taunting that one off of me eventually, and we should be swapping sides so that we can get everything we can possibly get. But with their frost traps being on both sides of it, I'm not too worried about it. We just need to be making sure that both of us tanks are swapping sides every single time. We're not on the same side, so that we can like kind of charge back and forth between ours, because with a warrior and a pharaoh, like, they can charge to each other's ads, and it doesn't really matter too much if they get close to each other. You just don't want to be in the middle of them as they're either frozen in place like they are now, or on the same side like we are now. Like, ideally you want to be swapping sides at the same time and in the middle at the same time, just going back and forth between the entire thing, because as you can see, I get really low, so I'm popping everything I can possibly do to survive a little bit longer. I want to try and save my Stampeding Roar and my boots for the end. And here's where we want to have them all grouped up, and they should be dying here. Like, you shouldn't have a single ad left during the green phase if you get a green phase. If you're just pumping the boss and not having to worry about anything else, then it can get a little bit messy. But he should be taking them all off of me, because for the final phase, I'm kiting the prime subjects and just making sure that they are away from the rest of the group. Here comes Lust, here comes the prime subjects. He grabs one, I grab one. He's taunting off the smaller ones from me. I'm trying to get threat on this prime subject. I messed up there. I should not have done that, because now I have to use my Stampeding Roar early and just kite them away. You want to make sure you're kiting them around and not anywhere near Malroiak. You can see I kind of juke them a little bit by popping my boots and getting away from them, but as well as using your bash to stun some of the other ones, charging over to the other aberrations as well really helps because there's a charge just to get away from the prime subjects. You don't want them wailing on you for too long, otherwise you will die, especially with you being so far from the healers. Um, Bosch is going down here, and we'll move on to Nefarian. All right, next up we have Oni and Nefarian's End. So for this first part, I will be DPSing Onyxia until Nef comes down, then putting him in position. So it's essentially the same as your normal DPS rotation. You're just going all into one mob till the point where you have to swap. You want to be swapping right after a tail whip or tail lash and into bear form so that you're taunting and using your fairy fire on Neff as he is coming down, so you get that initial threat. Once you get the initial threat on Neff, see there's a tail lash, I'm in bear form, there's a taunt and a fairy fire, so I'm pulling him over to the side. I'm popping survival instincts here because I'm not tanking the final phase, so therefore I will be popping my survival instincts early just to reduce the damage I take while they are enraged. We swap over to Neff till roughly just below 70% on this one. So we can get a little bit extra damage before he goes up using cooldowns for his crackle, just making sure you're rotating through your raid cooldowns for each one. You can see my MRT notes. I have it set up for all of the different raid cooldowns. Here comes the second crackle out, and we are using again more raid cooldowns just to absorb some more damage and get some extra DPS out. The ads are dead in the middle. We do end up 3 tanking this as well, but for the final phase, I end up going to more of a DPS and just back up, just in case he does die. Here comes the third crackle, and then we are swapping over to Oni. Oni is actually dead at this point because the DK is enough from about 10% on to kill Oni. Now we're moving into phase 2 where we're killing the ads on the platform, separating out the entire group to their specific platform. These don't really need to be tanked, so you could just go into cat form and DPS these down. The reason why I'm in tanking is just so that we can keep the mobs facing in one direction, just so that people can just not have to spin around to attack from behind if they really want to. They are low level ads as well, so it really, again, doesn't matter. You're just making sure you're getting your interrupts, making sure that they go down. My platform really doesn't need the extra DPS as well because it does go down faster than the other platforms as well. So the only thing you can really do in this phase is just fairy fire the boss. You could put Moonfire and Insect Swarm on the boss, but I don't even have them on the bars, and I don't feel like they do that much damage anyways, and my damage really doesn't matter um, during the phase anyways. First Crackle is coming back up before he comes down, and that's where we should be using personal cooldowns. That's where I use my bark skin just to mitigate a little bit of the damage from that. All right, now Neff is moving away. You can kind of see me feral charge in and just make sure that I can get some more damage out for free. And the ads are going to be coming up here shortly with the first one. There goes Lust, and we're just burning down Neff the entire time. There isn't much tanking that I do in this phase. You can't really see the other tank. He's just kind of kiting right next to the middle, trying to pick up all the ads as the flames come out. You can see a couple of them get loose, so I then go into bear form and make sure that they go onto him just to make it a little bit easier and less damage going out on other people. For normal, this is a pretty easy fight. He's just kind of face tanking it, where I'm going over, giving him drums and stampeding roar, charging back. It's a good practice to give that because on heroic, the ad tank is going to be wanting to kite more often. He ends up face taking it way too much. It is something that I need to address with him specifically, but I don't think that the ads need to be face tanked as much as they are. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching my BWD. There will be timestamps in this because it is a longer video for each one of the bosses. Again, I'll link the DPS version of this raid for anybody who wants to watch Atramedes from a DPS perspective. But again, that's all I'm going to cover for this raid. And it's pretty straightforward. Hope you all liked it. Leave a like and a comment if you did. If you didn't like it, let me know what I can do better. Thanks.